That dress you are wearing? I chose it for myself. And that man standing beside you, I loved him first. And this name you are carrying into that church today, that name is mine too. You borrowed everything from me.
The church went silent, the bride frozen at the altar, and the girl everyone called a servant was holding a document that would stop the wedding completely. On the outskirts of Lagos, in a town called Orimadu, where the roads were still red clay dirt and mango trees leaned heavy over compound walls, the Okonkwo family was the kind of family everyone respected without being asked to. Chukwuemeka Okonkwo was the largest fabric merchant in the region. His wife, Ngozi Okonkwo, lived in the finest house in Orimadu, sat in the front row at church every Sunday, and wore the most expensive outfit to every wedding she attended. Their daughter Chioma was their only heir. 16 years old, beautiful, and very aware of both. In March of that year, a man came to the door. Hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Ngozi opened it. The man spoke. His voice was barely there. Mrs. Okonkwo. My name is Ikena. I am Adaeze's father. These will be my last words on this earth. My wife is gone. My own time is coming soon. I don't want my daughter to be a burden on anyone. We have heard about you and your husband. Good people. Would you take this child? Ngozi looked past him. There she was. Years old. Thin as a reed. Big brown eyes. A torn dress that had been washed so many times the color had given up. Her name was Adaeze. Ngozi glanced at her husband. Chukwuemeka gave a single slow nod. Ngozi turned back to the man at the door. Bring her inside. That day, a little girl walked through the door of that house. What she meant to them, nobody said out loud. But time made it clear. No room was prepared for Adaeze. She was given Chioma's old clothes. She was sent to school, yes. But every morning she had to iron Chioma's uniform before her own. Every afternoon she carried Chioma's lunch. Every evening she cleaned Chioma's room. You are our daughter now, Ngozi told her once. But nobody asked Adaeze how that felt. Because Adaeze was never asked anything. Years passed. The older Chioma got, the more beautiful she became. Her mother bought her the finest clothes, the best schools. Every Sunday at church people smiled at her. The Okonkwo girl, they called her. The older Adaeze got, the quieter she became. But something happened over those years. Something nobody noticed. Adaeze learned everything. She read Chioma's textbooks at night in secret. When Chioma passed her classes, nobody knew those were Adaeze's grades. Because Adaeze did the assignments. Chioma turned them in. Adaeze sewed. Chioma wore it. Adaeze cooked. Chioma ate it. Adaeze laughed. But only alone. Everyone pretended not to see it. But one person saw. Emeka Obi came from Lagos. He was the son of one of Chukwuemeka's business associates. 26 years old. Engineering degree. Calm, thoughtful, the kind of young man who listened before he spoke. The evening he arrived, he was invited to dinner at the Okonkwo home. The table was set beautifully. Chioma wore her finest dress. Ngozi had ordered the best food prepared. Emeka walked in. Everyone laughed, talked, performed. Emeka sat at the table. And right then the kitchen door opened. Someone came through carrying a large tray. Steam rising from a bowl of soup on top. It was Adaeze. She walked so carefully that not a single drop moved in that bowl. Emeka watched her. Adaeze set the tray down. Lowered her head. Turned back toward the kitchen. Emeka looked at Chioma. Chioma laughed, talked, sparkled. But Emeka's mind had stayed in the kitchen doorway. The next morning, Emeka was sitting alone in the courtyard before breakfast. Adaeze was sweeping the yard. Did you make the soup last night? Emeka asked. Adaeze stopped. No one had ever asked her that. Yes, she said. Where did you learn? Adaeze shrugged. By watching. Just by watching. No cookbook. There were no books. Silence. What's your name? Adaeze. Emeka said it back slowly. Adaeze. Like he was tasting it. That's a beautiful name. Adaeze lowered her head and went back to sweeping. But something was on her face. Very small. Almost invisible. Smile. Chioma saw everything. She saw the way Emeka looked at Adaeze. She saw him walk toward the kitchen. She saw him talking to Adaeze in the courtyard in the early morning. That night she went to her mother. Mama. That man is talking to Adaeze. Ngozi set down her cup. What do you mean? In the yard. This morning. They talked for a long time. Ngozi stood up slowly. Her face had changed. That night she called Adaeze. Adaeze. Yes, ma'am. You don't speak to our guests. Your job is cleaning and cooking. Do you understand that? Adaeze lowered her head. Yes, ma'am. Go. Adaeze turned and walked toward the door. But as she stepped out, she felt Ngozi's eyes on her back. Those eyes weren't asking. They were telling. You are not a name in this house. You are a shadow. Chioma was smart, but not as fast as her mother. Her mother thought 3 steps ahead. The very next morning, Ngozi invited Emeka for breakfast. This time Chioma sat at the head of the table. Best dress, best hair, brightest smile. Emeka came. He sat. Chioma talked. She laughed. She made jokes. Emeka responded politely. But once, just once, his eyes slid toward the kitchen door. Adaeze wasn't there. Ngozi had sent her on an errand that morning on purpose. For weeks, this became the pattern. Whenever Emeka visited, Chioma was front and center. Adaeze was pushed to the back. And slowly it was working. Emeka began to get comfortable with Chioma. She was sharp, beautiful, entertaining. She fit everything his family expected. But there was something. Every time Emeka came, Chioma laughed harder, talked louder, performed more. And every time Adaeze pulled further back. Silently. One night Adaeze couldn't sleep. She got up and went to the kitchen to get some water. Emeka was already there. Both of them froze. Sorry, Emeka said. I couldn't sleep either. Me neither, Adaeze said. Silence. Emeka set his glass down. Adaeze. Yes. Are you happy here? Nobody had ever asked her that. Adaeze didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, happiness isn't always something you get to choose. Emeka frowned. What do you mean by that? Some people choose their lives. Others, their lives choose them. Emeka said nothing. But that sentence settled somewhere inside him and never left. Adaeze had one private thing. An old biscuit tin. Kept under her mattress. Inside it was a photograph. Black and white. Slightly faded at the edges. 2 women. Standing outside a hospital. One of them was holding a newborn baby. The other had her arm around the first woman's shoulders. Both of them were smiling. Adaeze had found this photograph when she was 9 years old. In her father's pocket. While he was in the hospital. She'd taken it while he slept. She knew one of the women was her mother. But she didn't recognize the other one. And she'd never been able to ask. Because her father went to sleep that night and never woke up. Adaeze kept that photograph. Through every humiliation, every cold night, every dream that was taken from her. She carried it. And she didn't know yet what secret was locked inside it. But she was about to find out. There was a celebration in the house. Emeka had proposed. Chioma. Ngozi cried. Joy. Chukwuemeka opened a bottle. Neighbors came over. There was food and music and celebration. Adaeze cooked everything. People came and went. They ate and drank and laughed. Adaeze cleared the plates. Not one single person said, congratulations to her. Because this wedding had nothing to do with her. But that night, Adaeze lay on her mattress and pulled out the tin. She looked at the 2 women in the photograph. And a question came to her. Why did my father carry this photograph in his pocket? Why didn't he let go of it? Not even at the end. After the engagement, Emeka started coming around more. But something bothered him. Chioma was beautiful. Smart. Said all the right things. But something was missing. One afternoon Emeka went into the kitchen. Adaeze was there alone, cooking. Adaeze. He turned. Does Chioma care about you? Adaeze didn't answer. Be honest. Still nothing. Emeka, Adaeze finally said. That's not a question you should be asking me. Why not? Because no matter what I say, both of us end up hurt. Emeka paused. Both of us. Why would you be hurt? Adaeze turned back to the stove. Your food will be ready in 10 minutes. Wedding preparations began. Ngozi went to the finest tailor in town. She chose the most expensive fabric. A wedding gown was commissioned for Chioma. Then one day Ngozi called Adaeze in. Adaeze, on the wedding day you will be serving food, drinks, cleanup. Yes, ma'am. And understand this clearly. You will not go near Emeka. You will not leave my sight. You focus on your work and nothing else. Yes, ma'am. Ngozi narrowed her eyes. You know your place in this house, don't you? Adaeze looked at her. I know, ma'am. But there was something in Adaeze's eyes in that moment. Something Ngozi couldn't name. And that unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Emeka walked out. But that word stayed with him. Both 2 weeks before the wedding, a letter arrived. Addressed to Adaeze. Ngozi saw it first. Her hands trembled. The return address showed a law firm. Adewale and Partners. One of the most established practices in Lagos. Ngozi hid the letter. But she was too late. The postman had already told Adaeze. There's something here for you. That night Adaeze went to Ngozi. Ma'am, did a letter come for me? Ngozi's eyes didn't move. No. Must have been the wrong address. Adaeze looked at her. All right, ma'am. He turned away. But Adaeze knew. And that night she made a plan. 10 days before the wedding. Adaeze asked for an afternoon off. Ma'am, could I go to church on Sunday? Ngozi thought about it. Go. But be back early. Adaeze left. She didn't go to church. She went straight to the offices of Adewale and Partners. She walked through the front door. Gave her name to the receptionist. Adaeze. The receptionist looked at the computer. Then stopped. Right this way, she said. Mr. Adewale is expecting you. Mr. Adewale was an older man. Gray hair. Glasses. A desk buried under thick folders. Adaeze walked into his office. He stood up. That surprised her. Nobody stood up for her. Welcome, Adaeze. Please sit down. He sat. He opened the folder on his desk. I have a few things I need to tell you. We've been looking for you for a long time. Looking for me? Yes. Adaeze Ikenna. Daughter of Ikenna Chukwu. That's me. He placed a photograph on the desk. Adaeze's eyes went wide. It was the same photograph. The same 2 women. The same hospital. Do you recognize this? Adaeze's throat tightened. I do. The woman on the left. She was your father's great love. Her name was Mama Chidinma. And the other one. He paused. The other one was your father's mother. Your grandmother. Adaeze waited. And that baby. He looked at her. That's you. Adaeze couldn't speak. Mr. Adewale continued. Your father Ikenna was a young man working in Lagos when he met Mama Chidinma. They fell in love. They got married. You were born. But they told me my mother died. She did. Shortly after you were born. Your father was devastated. He went back to Orimadu. With you. So what does this have to do with a law firm? He pulled a document from the folder. Mama Chidinma came from a wealthy family. Large landholdings. Trading companies. After her death, your grandmother on your father's side protected that estate for many years. Adaeze forgot to breathe. Your grandmother passed away 2 years ago. She left everything to you. To me. To you. Adaeze Ikenna. Her only grandchild. Silence. He continued. 17 parcels of land. 2 trading companies. And liquid assets. Adaeze's hands pressed flat on the edge of the desk. How much? She asked. He told her. And that number turned Adaeze's world completely upside down. Wedding morning arrived and the house burst into noise. Chioma had started getting ready hours before sunrise. Makeup, hair, the gown. Ngozi ran from room to room barking instructions. Guests were arriving. Cars lined the street. Adaeze was in the kitchen, cooking. A woman passing through looked at her. "Girl, nobody's taking care of you today. It's a wedding and you're still back here." Adaeze smiled. "Someone's got to do it." The woman left. Adaeze took off her apron. Underneath was a clean, pressed dress she had put on that morning. And under her arm a bag. Inside it, documents. The church was packed. 500 guests. Flowers everywhere. Choir singing softly. Emeka stood at the altar. The doors opened. Chioma walked in. Every head turned. The gown was stunning. Chioma was radiant. Emeka watched her walk down the aisle. And then, near the back entrance of the church, he saw someone else standing. Emeka's eyes found her before his mind knew why. And he saw the envelope in her hand. Chioma reached the altar. The pastor began to speak. "If anyone here has just cause why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony." Silence. And then a voice. "I do." Every single person in that church turned around. Adaeze had stood up. Ngozi's face drained of color. Chioma's whole body went stiff. Emeka just looked. Adaeze walked forward. Low. Steady. Every step deliberate. She reached the front of the church. She turned to face Chioma directly. "That dress you're wearing, I picked it out for myself." Chioma's voice shook. "What are you? And that man standing next to you? I loved him first." Ngozi shot to her feet. "Adaeze, you stop this right now. And this name you're carrying into this church today." Adaeze paused. "Let the silence hang. The Okonkwo name. Is that whose name you're wearing?" "No, Chioma. You borrowed a name. You borrowed everything. From me." The church went so quiet you could hear the candles flicker. Adaeze opened the envelope. She pulled out the papers inside. "These documents are from Adewale and Partners, one of the most respected law firms in Lagos." Ngozi stepped forward. "Adaeze, you put those down right now." Emeka held out his hand. "Wait." His voice was calm, quiet, but it filled the room. Ngozi stopped. Emeka looked at Adaeze. "Go on." Adaeze continued. "My mother's family is one of the oldest landowning families in Lagos. Trading companies, properties. My grandmother passed away 2 years ago. She left everything to me." The church erupted in whispers. "I came to this house when I was 8 years old. I was alone. Had nothing. The Okonkwo family took me in and I am grateful for that. I genuinely am." Ngozi's eyes were glistening now. "But the day they took me in, they made a choice. They chose not to treat me as a daughter. They treated me as a tool. My clothes were put on Chioma's back. My schoolwork was turned in under Chioma's name. The man standing at this altar, the one who should have been allowed to find his way to me, was redirected. Deliberately." Emeka's jaw tightened. Everything was borrowed. And this wedding today was supposed to put a crown on everything they took from me. The church was absolutely still. Emeka looked at Adaeze for a long moment. Then he turned to Chioma. "Chioma, I need to ask you something. And I need the truth." Chioma was shaking. "Emeka, please. Is what she's saying true?" Ngozi stepped in immediately. "Emeka, this girl is lying. She came to our home with nothing and we gave her. Mrs. Okonkwo." Emeka's voice dropped 1 degree. "I wasn't asking you." He turned back to Chioma. "Did she do your schoolwork?" Chioma's eyes hit the floor. "Answer me." A long silence. "Yes." The church inhaled as one. "The things you told me about yourself, your achievements, your projects, were those hers?" Silence. "Chioma." "Yes," she whispered. "They were." Ngozi stood up with every ounce of pride she had left. "This girl grew up in our home. We gave her everything. And now she comes here to tear our family apart. Who does she think she?" "Ma'am." The voice was deep and authoritative. Everyone turned. A man was standing in the church doorway. Gray-haired, glasses, a thick leather folder in his hands. Mr. Adewale, I apologize for the interruption. I am this young lady's attorney. Ngozi's hands began to shake. I'd like to present these documents to this gathering. They confirm the identity and legal inheritance of Adaeze Ikenna. He opened the folder. Lagos Land Registry. 17 parcels. Chidinma Holdings. Company registration. And the last will and testament of the late Mama Chidinma Obi. Ngozi reached for the back of a pew to hold herself up. Adaeze Ikenna is the sole and undisputed heir to this estate. Chioma was crying, standing in her wedding gown. At the altar, in front of everyone, Adaeze looked at her. And in that moment something strange happened inside her. It wasn't anger. It wasn't satisfaction. It was understanding. Because Chioma had been a tool too. A piece in her mother's plan. She'd been shaped and used and pointed in a direction, just like Adaeze had. Adaeze walked toward her. Chioma stepped back instinctively. But Adaeze stopped in front of her. Gently. Chioma. Chioma looked up. I'm not blaming you. Your mother used you too. Chioma broke down completely. But when all of this is over, when everything settles, if you ever want to talk for real, honestly, my door is open. He turned and looked at Emeka. The wedding was over. Guests left in clusters, whispering, shaking their heads. Some quietly, some loudly. The church emptied. Adaeze stood outside under a tree. Emeka found her there. Adaeze. Emeka. Why didn't you tell me before? Before any of this? Adaeze looked at him. Tell you what exactly? That I thought I had a secret inheritance. No one would have believed me. I would have. Maybe. But then there'd always be a question. Did she speak up for the money? Or for something real? Emeka was quiet for a moment. Today was the right time, she said simply. Silence stretched between them. That night in the kitchen, Emeka finally said. When neither of us could sleep. Felt something. I didn't know what to do with it. Adaeze met his eyes. I felt it too, she said quietly. Several days later, Ngozi came to Adaeze's door. Adaeze had moved into a small rented home. Modest, clean, paid for with her first access to the inheritance funds. Ngozi knocked. Adaeze answered. Ngozi looked older. Muller. Adaeze. Mrs. Okonkwo. May I come in? Adaeze stepped aside. They sat across from each other in the small room. A long silence passed. Then Ngozi spoke. I came to apologize. Adaeze waited. I used you like a servant. I looked past you for years. I built Chioma up on your work. I did all of it knowingly. Silence. Why? Adaeze asked. Ngozi closed her eyes. Because you frightened me. You always understood everything. You always saw everything. And I couldn't control you. So I contained you instead. Adaeze looked at her for a long time. And now I've lost everything. No, Adaeze said. You haven't. You still have Chioma. You have the chance to find out who she actually is. To let her build something real. With her own hands. Without stealing mine. Ngozi's chin trembled. Can you forgive me? Adaeze sat still. Yes, she finally said. But forgiveness doesn't rebuild what was broken. That takes something else. Something you have to choose to do every day. In the weeks that followed, Adaeze made 3 decisions. The first. She used a portion of the inheritance to establish a small textile company in Lagos. But entirely hers. The second. She had the land her grandmother had left her. The original Chidinma family property in Lagos, assessed and restored. The third. She visited Chioma. Chioma opened the door. Her eyes were red. Her hair undone. Adaeze. Chioma. Can I come in? Chioma stepped aside. They sat in the small sitting room of the family house. A house that suddenly felt like it was made of paper. Neither one spoke for a long time. Then Chioma said, I always knew. Somewhere inside me. how they treated you. But I stayed quiet. I know. Why did you come here? Adaeze thought about her answer. Because you were a victim too. And you don't have to stay one. Chioma stared at her hands. Emeka won't even look at me. Then don't do this for Emeka. Do it for yourself. Chioma looked up. Find out who you are on your own. Not on top of what was taken from me. On your own ground. A month later, Emeka showed up at Adaeze's office in Lagos. Can I come in? Please. He sat across from her desk. I'd like to invest in the company. Adaeze's eyes lit up slightly. Then she smiled. Is that really what you wanted to come say? Emeka smiled back. No. Silence. But it was easier to start there. Adaeze waited. He stood. Came around to the front of the desk. Adaeze. I want to know you. Really know you. From the beginning it was always you. But everything around us was so complicated that I couldn't find the path. I know. It's not complicated anymore. Adaeze looked at him. My life has been very complicated lately, she said. I know. But I'm patient. She laughed softly. I can see that. That evening Adaeze went home. She pulled out the old biscuit tin. She looked at the photograph. 2 women. In front of a hospital. One holding a newborn. Adaeze now knew who they were. Her mother. And her grandmother. Both of them were gone. But they had left something behind. Not just money. Not just land. Name. Adaeze Ikenna. Not borrowed. Not taken. Not performed. Real. 6 months later, a ribbon-cutting ceremony took place in Lagos. Above the door. Chidinma Textile Company. Her grandmother's name. Adaeze stood at the entrance. Mr. Adewale was beside her. And Emeka. And, to the surprise of nearly everyone, Chioma. She had come alone. Without her mother. Standing quietly near the edge of the crowd. Congratulations, Chioma said when Adaeze caught her eye. Adaeze walked over. Thank you. Chioma took a breath. I want to learn. My own. Start over. If you'd be willing to let me try. Adaeze looked at her for a long moment. I'm willing, she said, after the opening. After the guests had gone, Adaeze sat alone in her new office. And she let herself think. She had been left at a door at 8 years old. She had served for years. She had been invisible for years. Her dress had been taken. Her grades had been taken. Her path had been redirected. But one thing had never been taken. Who she was. Adaeze Ikenna. That name had never been borrowed. Never stolen. Never erased. Because a name isn't just letters. A name is character. And no one, no house, no plan, no pride, no power, can take that from you. Before we close, let me say this clearly. Adaeze never stopped being Adaeze. Not for one single day. They took her clothes. They took her achievements. They tried to redirect her love. They positioned her behind someone else's future. But they could not touch who she was. And that is the first lesson. Being unseen is not the same as being nothing. Adaeze was invisible in that house for years. But she was watching. She was learning. And when the moment came, she used every single thing she had absorbed. The second lesson. What is taken from you has a way of coming back. Maybe not in the same form. Maybe through a different door. But the truth always finds its way out. Because real things don't disappear, they wait. The third lesson. Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. Adaeze forgave Ngozi. She extended grace to Chioma. But she didn't go back. She didn't pretend the wound wasn't there. She forgave and then she built forward. That is what forgiveness actually looks like when it's real. And the fourth lesson, perhaps the most important one. Never lend out your name. Not your success. Not your voice. Not your story. Those things belong to you. Only you. Adaeze lived in that house for years and let everyone believe she was background. But she never lost the thread of who she actually was. She held on to it through every cold night, every stolen assignment, every meal she cooked that someone else was praised for. She held on. And at the exact right moment, in front of 500 people at an altar with documents in her hand, She let that thread become the whole story. They borrowed everything, but they could never borrow her. And that, more than the land, more than the companies, more than anything Mr. Adewale put in that folder, is what made Adaeze Ikenna rich. She always knew who she was, and she never gave it away.